Well, would you look at this? It's another AEW Dynamite review, which means that this is a Thursday, because that's what we do here on Thursdays on youtube.com/MrWarrenHayes or on your favorite podcast app, which carries the Mr. Warren Hayes show proper. Hello, I'm Mr. Warren Hayes. So we're going to be talking about AEW Dynamite. Today is January 26, 2023. And you know what to do at this point. I'm still going to remind you. I'm told it's a good practice to remind, never assume that people are just going to like a video and subscribe to your channel out of habit. I'd like you to. If you want, that'd be great. Helps grow everything. And if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, 5-star ratings on Spotify, 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Cheers to you. This stuff is fantastic. Well, we're going to jump into this Dynamite fairly quickly today. I don't there's various things that we can touch about. Usually I like to start off the review with discussing some of the meta around, Dynamite and what's going on in AEW. I don't think there's outside of very tiresome, boring discourse. There isn't much. There's a couple of things, but I'm going to touch on it as we go along here. But we might as well just go ahead and talk about this Dynamite. January 25th, Lexington, Kentucky at the Rupp Arena. I will say straight out the gate, I thought this was the lowest energy crowd for a Dynamite we've seen in weeks at this point, in a long time. And I don't know if I'm having trouble pinning down if it's because the level of the crowd, its energy was so low for the show, or if it's just the wrestlers. But I felt like Dynamite was a very low energy show. I thought that everything that happened on it was fine for the most part. Good, solid work, but there was nothing that blew my mind. There was none of these signature big matches. It wasn't an all-time. But overall, here's the thing. Is this was a fine pro wrestling show. Don't get me wrong. And with a very notable main event, of course we'll get to that. But when I say we're spoiled week after week, is this a consequence of me being spoiled week in, week out, where I'm getting these classic matches, these, potential match of the year candidates, these 4-star matches week in, week out, 2-3 of them a night. And then I get to Dynamite where I'm like, well, this is it's all right, but I'm missing that position. Is that me, being spoiled, acting like a brat and going, well, Dynamite didn't quite deliver like it usually does. And yet, this was still a better wrestling show than a lot of stuff you see on a weekly basis from a lot of people in a lot of promotions. Isn't that weird? But, I think it has to be said. This, it didn't feel as urgent. It didn't feel as important. It didn't have that bubbling overflow of energy that a usual Dynamite has. Is it because of the crowd? Is it because of, the talent? Is it a combination of both? I can't say for sure. Now, I feel like there's a couple of matches that happened. I think there's a couple of, let's get into it, right? We'll just get into it piece by piece. Starting off with the Jericho Appreciation Society defeating Action Andretti and Ricky Starks. And when I say the Jericho Appreciation Society, I'm specifically talking about Le Sex Gods, which should be Les Sex Gods, not Le Sex Gods, right? Look, point a gun at my head, and say, stop talking about French conjugation in English environments, Warren. You gave us a class on how to pronounce on the accents regarding Mercedes Moné a couple of weeks ago. Now you're going to tell us it's not le sex gods, it's les sex gods. Yes, because le is plural, L-E-S. Sex gods, and they put an S at the end, so it's not just one, there's two. So it should be le sex gods, L-E-S, and not L-E, which is singular. Although it is funny, like they get points for the comedy aspect of it, but it's still not proper grammar. I just want to point that out to anyone who's thinking that, oh, this is how it's done in French. No, it's not. This is not how it's done in French. That's spelled correctly. Match starts off with a stalemate between Sammy Guevara and Action Andretti. Andretti hits a springboard drop kick. Guevara fights back with a drop kick of his own. Dive by Andretti on Daniel Garcia, who's on the floor accompanying Le Sex Gods. But immediately Sammy Guevara follows up with a corkscrew dive to the floor. That was a nice little sequence right there. Top rope Rana by Andretti. Top rope Rana by Sammy Guevara on Action Andretti, but Andretti lands on his feet. Ricky Starks and Chris Jericho go off on each other. Starks does the rope walk thing, and Sammy Guevara arrives out of nowhere with a cutter, which was a fantastic visual. Ricky Starks is your babyface in peril at this moment. Andretti, of course, gets the hot tag. Tornado DDT by Ricky Starks, a spear as well on Chris Jericho, followed by a very close pinfall. The code breaker attempt is countered into a Liger bomb by Starks. Andretti takes down Guevara, but Chris Jericho interferes. Andretti lands a Canadian neck breaker, which is something you don't see every day. But while the ref is distracted, Dan Garcia comes in, swings the bat at Andretti. Guevara lands the go to hell for the win. Perfectly competent match here. There's nothing really to get upset about, but this is the thing. What is one of the most constant things I say when I do these reviews, and even before when I was breaking down Dynamite on the MrWarrenHayes show itself, what was one of the most consistent things I would always say? That one of the great things about Dynamite is that it starts off with a hot match. Now, the match had been well built to this point. Just a couple of weeks of build up to this match here. It was perfect, well done. But like I said, I don't know if it's because the crowd felt a little out of it. Andretti is still finding his feet, and the audience are waiting for when you're pushing a guy like Andretti, 25 years old, like just completely out of the gate. You're giving him, career wins over the likes of Chris Jericho. Well, people are like, okay, well, what's next? Like, give us a reason to continue cheering for this guy. We went nuts for the jobber, which is still one of, it will always be one of the all-time great Dynamite moments. When that match where Action Andretti, where people were chanting at him, "Let's go, jobber," when no one believed he would pull off a win and actually ended up doing it, right? It'll be an all-timer. Like he's very much a part of the lore of the history of AEW moving forward. Now the question here is I saw people discuss it like, oh well, he's not over, is he? He comes out of nowhere. He's a couple of years in the business. He's 25 years old, and clearly Tony Khan is trying something out here. So we're going to see how the follow-up is going. Are we even a month removed? Just about a month removed from the Jericho match? And what are people expecting? He has weaknesses. He's not a perfect total package. And we're going to see what happens. And he's in this cycle. He's in this cycle of booking. And eventually Tony Khan is going to cycle him out. And he'll bring him back. Because this is one of the things that Tony does. He cycles people out, brings them back for a while, and And that's what he has to do. He's got a 2-hour show on Tuesdays with a huge roster. Now you could say, well, Warren, that's part of the problem. And I'm not entirely in disagreement with you. But the thing is that you can't put everyone on TV, and you just can't. Now, Andretti right now is writing something. They're giving him a little push. They want to see how far they can push the kid. How good can he compete here? And I think the consensus is pretty clear. He's not a finished product by any chance, by any thought process. He's not a finished package at all. A complete product is what I'm trying to say. Thank you, Warren. You're welcome, Warren. But we're trying stuff out. Going to get that stuff out. But then, of course, the other part of the discourse here is that, well, why isn't it another guy getting it? Why isn't it Sean Dean? Why isn't it, fucking Buddy Murphy? I don't know. Like, I don't have a good answer for you. I don't have a good answer for you. Other than Tony's trying something out. You're not going to sit here and tell me that the Action Andretti pin over Chris Jericho wasn't one of the most exciting things and unexpected things you hadn't seen in a while. Now, the follow-up is always important, don't get me wrong. And I don't know what kind of follow-up we're going to have here. Like Sean Waltman didn't go on a tear after defeating Razor Ramon, was not suddenly elevated to championship level status the week after. Continued working with that. I don't know what the expectation people have here, other than their favorites not getting a push, and then this kid getting a push, getting some time on TV with Chris Jericho. Why isn't it Will Hobbs on it? Well, this is one of the things that, the other broken record topic that I have here on these reviews, and this goes for every wrestling show, and it even goes for WWE. And don't get me wrong, I have been and continue to be guilty of this as well, and I'm trying to curtail it because I think it doesn't add anything. But it's always a question of, we never focus on this, but because I find it's especially true with Dynamite. We will complain about what we don't see. This will always be talking points, as opposed to the great stuff that we do see. Where's Will Hobbs? Where's Miro? Where's Wardlow? Where are all the guys? Where are all these guys? Why aren't they on my TV? And yet, week in and week out, as I keep saying, this is the most solid weekly wrestling program you will get. You will get excellent matches, but then when we're done, it's like, God damn it, still no Miro. No, dropping the ball with Keith Lee. And I don't have a problem if you are a Will Hobbs fan and you're like, I want to see this guy because I am a fan. That I can get behind. That I can understand. But trying to intellectualize why X wrestler should be getting a push rather than Y wrestler who is currently on TV, and then try to break it down in some fashion that you're like, this is my inescapable logic that makes complete sense as to why this person should be pushed instead of this guy. That gets grating and annoying. And it's discourse that I can't get behind. You might as well just come out and say, look, as a fan, I wish there was more of X and Y. Like, I wish there was more, Beaver Bros, Beaver Boys, Silver and Reynolds on TV, because they're a great tag team. I wish there were more. Am I sitting here every week telling y'all that this is a great mistake? No, because we've got so much other stuff to talk about. It'd be great if they were on television, but they haven't been fired. They haven't been tossed aside. They're not they're still there. I just wish there was more of them. Just like I wish when Stu Grayson was still there, I wish there had been more SSB matches, more, Evil Uno and Stu Grayson, numero dos and Evil Uno numero dos, player dos. SSB. That's what I would have liked. I didn't get it. Sucks. And I still think it's a bad opportunity. I still think it's a missed opportunity. But overall, in the grand scheme of things, then afterwards, I'm looking at everything happen. I'm like, Dynamite's great. Would Miro be a welcome addition to the weekly TV? I guess so. Absolutely. Like his promos week after week were fantastic when he was doing the Redeemer stuff. I think he still has more to offer in the ring. Am I kicking rocks and shitting on Dynamite for not having Miro? No. I think Dynamite is doing fine without him. Would he do better with him on? Maybe. I don't know. We'd have to see. But right now, I have no complaints. See, the Action Andretti stuff, and here's the other thing. It's not as if Action Andretti is like in a world title picture where he's in this upper echelon, he's in the top lane of AEW people. And they're trying to, convince us that he's a main eventer. He's a mid-card guy. That's how he was presented, even a lower mid-card guy, and this is still where he's at. He lost to Sammy. He got pinned by Sammy. That should tell you right there. It's not Ricky Starks who took the pin here. This is a vehicle to continue putting Ricky Starks on TV in prominent matches because Ricky Starks has all the tools to be a world champion in this company, and Toni sees it. So there's no mistake that he's in a feud with Chris Jericho. This is not about Action Andretti and Chris Jericho. And this is why we're all missing the point again. It's about Ricky Starks. This whole match was about Ricky Starks. Again, starting the show when people are still watching the lead-in, which was the Big Bang Theory or whatever the fuck it is now. And they tune in to see Chris Jericho and this other guy, this other fantastic guy, Ricky Starks. That's what they want you to see. And it all makes sense, and it's okay. And you know what? The Action Andretti will probably, meander in the mid-card for a bit, maybe even in the lower mid-card. He might, and I absolutely predict that after this pay-per-view cycle is done, he's going to be cycled off of TV for a while. I'm convinced. And this thing that everyone has to be on TV every week, the people who are being pushed, absolutely. And they should be cycled out. There should be moments where it's like, let's just take them off TV for a while to let the audience miss them. To let people know, we haven't seen Kenny Omega in a couple of weeks. What's going to happen when he pops back in? We're going to go nuts because Kenny's back. And it's not like back in the sense, he's been gone for so long. It's just like he's been away for a couple of weeks and now we see him back. Happy to see him again. It's like Darby Allin's on TV every week. Yeah, Darby Allin's getting pushed. And they're rehabilitating the TNT title. Isn't that something we wanted? Isn't that something? It didn't happen with Wardlow. I don't know what to tell you. It didn't happen with Wardlow. I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm apologizing. It has nothing to do with me. I didn't have anything to do with that. The big rehabilitation of the TNT title is happening with Darby. I don't know what to tell you. He's back out here. He's doing the open challenge gimmick. He's taking on all comers and it's working. I even find Darby has a little more depth to what he's doing. This is all connecting to me. And this is all stuff that people wanted. I don't understand. I don't know. I don't understand. And frankly, all I can do is focus on what I like and focus on the right things. And hopefully I can guide y'all along with me. Anyway, the match was all right. It was a good way to start, if only because of the people that were involved. That led us into the second match of the evening, which was the AEW TNT title match, where Darby Allin successfully retained his title against Buddy Matthews from the House of Black. I will say that this was a little strange to me. I will say this, all right? This is not the path that I was expecting the House of Black to be on at this conjuncture. I would have thought that the House of Black, as opposed to being in this feud where Eddie might be in the House of Black I would have thought that the House of Black would have been out there every couple of weeks, kicking the ass out of a trios team, out of the, have another match with the Nightmare Factory guys, have another match against, have a match with, Best Friends. Again, I thought we'd be more down this path, setting up some challengers for the Elite, which still might be the case, but I thought we'd be already down this path, is what I'm saying. There's still time. Like, if they want to do, if Toni wants to do the Elite versus the House of Black for Revolution, that's cool. We've got 6 weeks left. Plenty of time. Again, I've got people going, well, there's only 6 weeks left of the pay-per-view. There's 6 weeks left to the pay-per-view. Like, I feel like whenever there's a pay-per-view coming up, it's like nobody thinks there's enough time. I had a discussion like 2 weeks ago about the Royal Rumble. It's like, with someone, and they were like, well, there's only 4 weeks left before the Royal Rumble. There's a full month. And they're building stuff for the Royal Rumble. There's 4 weeks. You can tell. It's fine. Again, it's things that I don't know. I don't know where this comes from. It's like there's only 4 weeks. There's only 6 weeks. There's a full month and a half, right? 6 weeks is a month and a half, right? It's 4 weeks plus 2. A month is usually 4 weeks, correct? You can see it that way. There's a month and a half left to build for Revolution. What are we even talking about? So I don't know about having Buddy Matthews in a losing situation here. I don't know about it, but it happened. Buddy Matthews goes right after Darby Allin, straight out the gate, throws him around a bit. Matthews catches him off of a dive, drops Darby Allin a couple of times on the side of the ring outside and swings him into the barricades, a la Samoa Joe. He lands a great Meteora on the apron. Flipping stunner by Darby Allin, coffin drop to the floor. The House of Black appear. Ortiz comes in to attack them with a kendo stick. And Sting, who's there, of course, with Darby Allin, with a bat. No Eddie Kingston, though. Poison Rana by Darby and a crucifix bomb. Stomp by Buddy Matthews. Superplex is reversed into an avalanche scorpion deathlock, followed by the coffin drop for the win by Darby Allin. I thought this match was okay. Again, the guys worked hard, but it lacked something. It didn't quite hit that next gear. If you want, if you may, if I can be so bold. It was just missing something. But well worked. It was a fine wrestling match, don't get me wrong. After the match, Tony Schiavone comes to the ring to chat with Darby, but they're interrupted by Samoa Joe, who shows up on the Tonytron, and he tells Darby, like he keeps doing these callbacks to Wendy, right? I love that, man. And he says he's coming for him again, and we're gonna have the rematch. We're gonna have the rubber match between the two. I'm absolutely okay with this. I'm absolutely okay with that. Samoa Joe and Darby going at it again. That's fine. Let's do that. Let's wrap up this series. I love it. I like this idea of rubber matches, of these, these trilogies. We're getting that with Hangman and Mox too. Anyway, fine little match. We get a video package for Adam Cole returning. He says he's thankful and excited to come back, but he doesn't know when he's going to be coming back, as he stares at a banner for the Revolution pay-per-view. So he just doesn't know when he's coming back, right? And we had Jungle Hook defeating Ethan Page and Matt Hardy. I gotta say, I got a kick out of how this match started. They come out to the Hardy Boys music. But then Ethan Page has a microphone. He gets annoyed and he tells production to shut it down and play mine instead. Because it did get a good pop from the crowd. The Hardy Boys theme does get good reactions. People go, oh, no. And I know that they're teasing on BT. They're teasing that, Matt Hardy is going to go back to his broken character. That this situation here with Stokely and Ethan Page and all that, it's breaking him down. It's getting at him mentally. And, he did a full-on broken Matt thing recently on BT. It probably wasn't this week. It was last week. So I know we're heading into, there's that's been teasing. I don't know. Here's the thing. I don't know if I want, Matt Hardy. I don't know if you want Matt Hardy doing the broken gimmick again. It didn't work really that well when he came back. A lot of people will argue, say, but Warren, empty arenas. Maybe if there were people, it would have been different. Maybe. But, my second point to this, and my most important point, is I'm burnt out in regards to Matt Hardy on television, wrestling. Here's someone that I feel is taking up a spot. I don't know what Matt Hardy brings to the table in 2023 that is all that compelling. Now, he's over with live crowds, don't get me wrong. I've seen it twice with my own eyes, to a lot of surprise, to be honest, how big reactions he gets. But his work, Matt's broken legitimately, right? It's not he's injured. It shows. He's stiff. He's not as nimble. I don't know how much of a centerpiece I want him to be in AEW, and I feel they're putting off. I feel they're putting on too much effort in him for what he can provide. I don't think it's all that interesting. This is a guy that I feel is they're, when people start talking about where's Miro, where's Wardlow, this is one where I'm like, yeah, you know what? Yeah. But if it's a vehicle to help get Stokely over, Ethan over, okay, that's fine. But I just don't see it. I don't see it. Anyway, the match here, Paige tries to land the Ego's Edge early on, but on Hook, but Jungle Boy dives in for the save. Jungle Boy Jack Perry, the heels double team Perry and work him over. Hook gets the hot tag. This is the thing, right? Hook is the Robert Gibson. Ricky Morton's is Jack Perry, and this is why this team is going to work. This is why this team is going to work. And I still look at these two young dudes, handsome gentlemen. I still see them in the ring, and it gives me Rock and Roll Express vibes. Like in another era, all you would hear are women screaming their ears off, right? You'd hear that. Anyway, Hook gets the hot tag, T-bone suplex, aplenty. Jack Perry gets caught in a side effect. Matt Hardy goes for a twist of fate, but Ethan Page wants in, right? And he's the boss. So he says, you have to tag me in because, Matt's about to put this away, but Ethan Page is like, no, I'm gonna end this match. He finally comes in, but he gets caught in a snare trap. Hook prevents Matt Hardy from tagging in. Page taps out. Another win for Hook and Jack Perry. Which, if you ask me, is becoming a very interesting tag team to face off against the Acclaimed. Oh, wait. The Acclaimed had a segment with the Gun Boys. It's the family therapy segment, and I have no time for this nonsense. They had a therapist and everything who did nothing, who contributed nothing. She's the worst therapist of all time. All she did was emote when the guys would say stuff. That's all she'd do. And I have no time for this. Like this is the kind of shit that I have no purpose for. This makes no sense. I don't like it. It ends with a challenge for the tag titles, which could have been settled any other way. I'm going to continue down this path because I find that everything that has to do with the Acclaim and the Guns so far in this reignition of their feud, I think it stinks. Let's just get this match out of the way, and I keep telling you guys, gals, non-binary pals, I really believe this, but Austin Gunn is WWE made. He's a guy that they want, that he's absolutely the kind of guy they want. Young, good looking, built, can talk, athletic, but not like overly crazy. We're not, he's not a high spots guy. I wouldn't be surprised if he jumped. Wouldn't be surprised in the slightest. Anyway, I've already talked enough about this segment. It's, it was short. That was something that went for it. Oh, but Warren, the line about his mistakes. Billy Gunn's mistakes is why they're whatever it was. What was the line? And he said about, your failures as a father turned us into what we are today, kind of thing. The reflection of your failures is whatever. Such a good line. I don't know. It doesn't matter. No. Can't get me to care about it. Then we get Renee Paquette talking with Adam Page again this week. She says she wants him to clarify his very nebulous claims from last year, from last week, in regards to, making do and whatnot, rebuilding bridges or whatever, but he's still being very cagey. But he says, you know what? Next week we're going to be in Dayton, Ohio. So he says, you know what? I might fight. I'd like to fight Mox again next week. All right. Well, it seems to be all set. We're getting that. But Wheeler Yuta comes in, takes exception to this. He says he'll fight Hangman, and they're going to do it on Rampage. So there's your first reason to watch Rampage this week. That's an attraction. That's a fun little match that we've got set up here. There's another one that we'll talk about later. In the meantime, we have another match here. Bryan Danielson defeated Brian Cage. It's all set up because of MJF, of course. It's all part of the MJF thing. And again, like I've been seeing commentary, folks talking about it, and isn't this just, MJF doing the labors of Jericho again? I'm like, yeah, yes, and it is part of MJF's character to do this kind of nonsense. And not only that, MJF explicitly said it a few weeks ago when he was setting all this up. He said, I have a tendency to have my opponents jump through hoops to get to me. Plus, he's the champion. These are all prerogatives he has. I don't know what the problem is. This all makes sense. It's good storytelling. It's logical in the character. MJF, his biggest thing is that he's insecure, and he's insecure and comes off as a poser. And this is the whole thing with Bryan Danielson since the start, where Danielson's like, yeah, I'm going to fight you and I'm going to outclass you and I'm going to expose you. And MJF's getting nervous because he thought he would be able to just knock him out. But no, okay, this Danielson kid is for real. And I don't want to fight Bryan Danielson. This guy's nuts. This guy's insane. He's violent. He can do anything. Why would I fight Danielson? And he's doing everything he can to get him injured. This was the part. Yes, it is like the labors of Jericho, because it's MJF and that's his routine. Brian Cage uses his power, of course. Danielson goes to the knees to try and take him down. Round kicks by Danielson, but Cage just shrugs them off. No sells them completely. We get an early label lock by Danielson in a dive. He goes up top and lands a flying crossbody to the floor. You have more kicks. And Cage gorilla presses Danielson into the buckles. And a lot of people were very worried about that spot because he kind of looked like he landed head first. But again, I went back, I watched it, and Danielson was he protected himself. It was fine. Again, professional wrestlers should make their moves look painful, right? It has to look, that's how you know you're dealing with pros. And I know we're all very concerned about Bryan Danielson's health and his neck because it, was such a substantial thing, but we can also chill out a little bit. This guy knows what he's doing. And I know Brian Cage is not a favorite out there on the internet, so people are, oh, he was sloppy, toss him. No, everything was fine. Everything was fine. Released German suplex by Cage. He starts to work the arm of Danielson as per ordered by MJF, right? He wanted Cage to break the arm, so he starts doing that. Danielson does the corner flip, right? But Cage catches him mid flip, lands a shoulder breaker, which was pretty dope. Big strong man like him should be able to do shoulder breakers. Deadlift suplex on the first rope, then by Cage, and then the deadlifts German off the first rope. I don't know what people's problem is with Brian Cage other than attitude. Maybe they don't like him because he was pissy about AEW and oh, we can't have wrestlers be unsatisfied because of their position and and the Melissa Santos stuff and all of that. I don't know. I don't, the anti-vax stuff maybe, and that's legitimate as well. But I don't know what their problem is with his in-ring work. I really don't. I think he's, as far as a big guy, he is spectacularly good. He is above average, above and beyond. He does shit that no one else does. He's a pro. When's the last time you've heard someone get seriously injured wrestling Brian Cage? I don't know. I don't know what the issue is. And Toni recognizes it because Tony's like, yeah, we're going to put you in this angle here because you have to put this over because you're a monster. You're a huge guy. He played his role perfectly, played the heel wonderfully. I honestly don't know what the problem is. I don't get it. Danielson lands a superplex, does the round kicks Cage's fucking head in as well. He lands a leg capture suplex on Cage as well. Cage fires up power bomb. He fires up a power bomb, goes for another one, but Danielson rolls him up for the win. Great stuff. Great. I love the finish. Thought it was great. Came out of nowhere. After the match, Cage he goes after Danielson, lands the Weapon X. MJF runs down and he and Cage beat up on Danielson. MJF is directing traffic here, setting the chair. They set the chair through Danielson's arm and ram him up against the post. And then they get back into the ring, beat him up some more, set him up to Pillmanize the arm. But Konosuke Takeshita makes the save. As he said last week, he was looking after. He was going to have his back. So he runs in, chases the heels off. Well, he chases off MJF. Takeshita lands a jumping knee on Cage. After the match, Doc Samson and checks on Danielson. Then we go to commercial. As we come back, Renee Paquette is in the trainer's room and she's asking Samson if Danielson can wrestle. Danielson starts screaming at Samson, telling him that, he once wrestled 60 minutes with a separated shoulder, so he's going to be able to do this. And he's referencing a 2006 match against Colt Cabana on a Ring of Honor show. Best 2 out of 3 falls was the thing. And he had hurt his shoulder early on in the match, and he went the whole way through. He tells MJF that he's coming after what he loves the most in the world, the AEW World Title. No doctor will tell him that no doctor will keep him from wrestling, and that is the most shoot comment I have ever heard from Bryan Danielson. There's something very true in that. A lot of people wondered why didn't the Blackpool Combat Club come out to save him? We knew Wheeler was there. Why didn't he come out? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Maybe it's because because I watch a lot of, New Japan, and it doesn't happen very often that your faction brothers come in to save you. This could maybe it's this kind of mentality, but they're setting up the story that Takeshita has Danielson's back, which will probably lead us into Takeshita at some point getting his first big win on TV, right? In AEW is what I'm trying to say. So that's clearly the story that they're going here. So if they want to skirt around the Blackpool Combat Club to tell this story, I'm okay with it. It doesn't not make sense to me. And let's not forget here that you can also connect dots if you want. Danielson was acting weird a few months ago when William Regal was still around, and he and Utes were a little bit at odds, right? And there hasn't been really has there been a kumbaya moment back with the BCC since? I don't really think so, right? Danielson still comes out of the heel side now. It's no longer a tunnel, but the heel side of the stage setup. He's been doing that for forever. He's always kind of been like the odd man out a little bit. He doesn't, these guys don't have to get along. They just want to wrestle each other. These are tough guys. I don't know. I don't think it's that big a deal. We get pre-tape interviews from Toni Storm and Ruby Soho, which leads us into Ruby Soho defeating Toni Storm. Big forearm exchange to start this one off. And a big boot by Toni Storm to Ruby's face. She also eats a thumb to the eye and a hip attack to the floor. Toni Storm launches Soho into the barricade, snaps suplex by Storm, and she has a heel segment, a heel heat segment as well. Locks in a full Nelson where she ragdolls Soho around. But Soho fights back with some Saito suplexes. Back heel trip. Ruby Soho knees Toni Storm right in the mush. That was well connected. As Toni Storm begs off. Because she recently had her nose broken, right? And Ruby Soho was like, no, sorry, but it's a trap. And Toni Storm German suplexes her. Big hip attack in the corner. A DDT follows, but then Britt's music hits, which distracts Toni Storm enough for Ruby Soho to regain her senses, land the destination unknown, and win. Yeah, they're continuing this idea of Toni Storm being very backhanded. Well, Toni Storm and Saraya, right? Saying, we're the worldwide stars. We don't come from here. Like alluding to the fact, we're former Fed people, and we're coming into this promotion, and with these AEW chicks, whatever, what have they done, kind of thing, But they're implicitly they're using the fact that they were formerly WWE talent. And it's compounded here in the pre-tape. You have Toni Storm telling Ruby Soho, "Look, we ran in the same circles. What are you doing? Hanging out with these AEW originals." And here's a plea. If there's anyone in AEW who watches this, here's a plea that I have. Okay, as someone who has to deal with this shit, please stop calling them AEW originals. Personally, I don't have, or homegrown talent, right? AEW homegrowns. I don't have a problem with it personally. This is nerd shit, right? But it is creating such a visceral, stupid reaction from a lot of people. Jamie Hayter's not homegrown, which is true, but I don't care. Because I know what you're trying to say. I know what you're trying to do here. And you can't explicitly say it's the former Fed girls versus the AEW originals. But you can't say the Fed girls. You can't say the former E girls. You can't say that. And an E girl is something completely other, right? And you shouldn't use that regardless. It's not in this context anyway. But you know what I mean? So stop calling them like homegrown. Call them AEW originals. I think that's fine. Because I know what you're trying to do. I understand it. But there's a lot of people out there who don't. And they're like, well, Willow Nightingale's not an AEW original. My God. Right. Who cares? Who cares? They're trying to create teams here. They're creating this divide. I get it. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, so that's the idea. Here. So Toni Storm is going to Ruby Soho. She's going like, but why? You should be with us. Like, you don't go here, kind of thing. It's like, you should be with us, kind of thing. But Britt comes out. She was supposed to be in the match, but she was injured apparently. Not injured enough to not show up, which is good. And again, here's the thing. Here, I don't know if I'm giving whoever came up with this segment too much credit, but I know a lot of people got annoyed that it was a distraction finish, right? I'm like, me too at first. Take a step back. You think about it a minute. You're like, hey, here's the thing. That the women who come from the outside, let's not say the WWE, from the outside, they get distracted when a theme song plays because they come from outside where you're supposed to get distracted, like a fucking crow with a piece of tin foil when there's something shiny. They get distracted and then they lose matches because they get distracted because someone's music hits. Is this commentary? Is this like a character flaw that because you come from the outside and you were trained to react to this, Britt Baker's like, okay, let's do it. And Britt Baker was like, I'm going to come out, hit my music, and that's going to let Ruby Soho get the roll-up win. The women from not WWE are susceptible to being distracted because that's how it works there. And again, maybe I'm giving a little too much credit, but I think it's funny when you look at it in that perspective. Oh, we come from the other place, and then you bring in the other place's tropes, and they get used against you. You know, it's like when Tony Schiavone is talking about the Jericho Appreciation Society and they cheat to win. And Schiavone says, well, they're sports entertainers. That's what they do. They cheat to win. And like, look, it's not all that. These aren't thinly veiled shots, folks. MJF cuts a promo from somewhere backstage. I'm still giving some time for this women thing. I like the idea that we're leaning into Toni Storm, Saraya being heels. Saraya being a heel, I think, is a big advantage if for going down this route. We'll see how this all develops. MJF cuts another promo from backstage, is what I'm saying here. He apologizes for the environment in which he's in right now. He's hiding because some people here get a little heated backstage. And I'm like, oh, I wonder what he's talking about. He also says he's not the first Jew to hide from a man with blue eyes. And I'm saying, wow, okay, I'm glad you said it. He calls out Takeshita to tell him to stay out of his business. He tells Danielson, he tells Danielson, bad things happen in this company when MJF is crossed. Just ask that tall British guy who looks like Ellen DeGeneres on crack. Wow. He calls in a favor to a friend. And he says, next week we're gonna finish this, Danielson. He's calling in a favor to a friend who likes to pick people apart limb from limb, right? To continue the story with the arm, which is going to be the story leading into the pay-per-view. And that person is Timothy Thatcher, Noah's own Timothy. And honestly, this makes sense. It makes sense because that's what Thatcher is known for. He's known for being being a catch wrestler. He's going to work the limb. This is like, and Thatcher is he's a bit of a polarizing guy as far as his match work goes. There's either. How about this? Timothy Thatcher is like cilantro. You either love it or you hate it, right? You either love his matches or you can't stand them. You think they're boring. And I have trouble finding people who have a middle ground. I enjoy Timothy Thatcher. Overall, I understand why people at some point are like, there's a certain type of Thatcher match that turns people off completely. Just like there's a certain type of Young Bucks match that turns people off completely. But I think that this makes sense. I think it's good. And look, here's the thing. This is how you see that there's partnerships that exist. There's, when I see folks talking about, WWE are going to work with New Japan because Shinsuke Nakamura did the match with the Great Muta. I'm like, okay. First of all, shh. Second of all, this is the kind of thing that you actually promote, that you actually put on television, that you actually define, right? And clearly, there's a working relationship because Carl Anderson went there. They didn't even mention the match on TV. They had AJ Styles said, while Carl is in Japan handling business. They didn't say he was on Wrestle Kingdom, the biggest New Japan show of the year. They didn't say that he was defending a title. Nothing. And when he came back, they didn't say anything either. They didn't roll any highlights, so on and so forth. Look at what they did with Darby last night. They did Darby, they showed footage of him at the show, at the Noah show, the Great Muta show. They showed him and Sting in the ring and put that over. And now they're having Timothy Thatcher come in, Big Noah in his Noah presentation. Those are working relationships. That's how it's supposed to go. Not like, there's clearly a line because they alluded to. No. If there was a working relationship, trust me, they would be mentioning each other and talking about each other's shows. This is how talent exchange works. It's just as simple as that. And there's no more forbidden door. There's no more forbidden door. I know the pay-per-view is going to continue to be called that way because of what it was. And dare we remind ourselves what the Forbidden Door was in the first place? And it all had to do with how the elite guys left New Japan and the former management that were there. It had created a chill over relationships between the elite guys who were starting up AEW and New Japan. That's what the Forbidden Door was. When they started letting New Japan people back into to come work AEW and vice versa. That's how the Forbidden Door started to crack open. That's what it was. Then it became anything. And the moment that someone from another promotion showed up on another promotion, I was like, Forbidden Door. It's like, no. That's actually how pro wrestling should be. There should be this constant flow of talent exchange just to keep things interesting, just to make the business better. Excuse me. There's going to be that's going to happen. If you listen, if you've listened to the podcast this week, you already know about it, but it's been going up and down. There's a big Japanese show where you have New Japan, Noah, All Japan, TJPW, Dragon Gate that are all going to be on the same show. A big cross-promotional show in Japan is going to happen. Then in a week after, we're having the Juniors Festival, which is being put together by Hiromu Takahashi, where all the promotions in Japan have been invited, plus CMLL. This is what a healthy wrestling business looks like. It's not everyone in their fucking silos doing their own thing. So when I see talent being passed around like this, going, hey, we're bringing in Tim Thatcher, we're going to send, this was negotiated. It's like, sure, we'll send Darby and Sting for Muda's last match. Well, what are you going to do for me? If I need a guy, can you send me a guy? Tim Thatcher's perfect for this role. This is how a healthy wrestling business should look like. Welcome, new wrestling fans, to what a healthy wrestling business looks like, sounds like, feels like. This isn't Forbidden Door shit anymore. This is the norm. This is what it should be. And it's exciting. So I get excited. I'm like, this is dope. This makes sense. This rules. And it works in the context because, like I said, Timothy Thatcher is going to come in. He's going to work the arm. That's the idea. And we get another clip for another match that's been announced on Rampage. Remember, we were talking about Hangman versus Wheeler Yuta. Well, now we're getting Jamie Hayter versus Emi Sakura. And there's your second reason to watch the show. There's two big-ass reasons to watch Rampage this week. This rules. This rules. Hayter and Emi, Japanese trained. They've wrestled each other in the past numerous times. This is fun. This is fantastic. This is going to be another great showcase of great women's wrestling. Continuing to help expand the minds of North American wrestling fans as to what good women's wrestling should be. Good women's wrestling should be just like the dudes, essentially. This is what we're going to get. I'm excited for this. So I'm excited for Rampage this week. And then the main event, of course, the Jay Briscoe tribute match, where his brother Mark Briscoe defeated Jay Lethal. Y'all know my feelings about Jay Lethal. I couldn't, but for the sake of this situation here, I completely understand why he was in this position. I completely understand why he wanted this match, and everything made sense. Everything connected, and it was, look. Someone on Twitter said, and I mean, I'm going to parrot it, but it is as a memorial tribute match goes, you couldn't have much more picture perfect than this. And, Jay has an extremely long history with Mark, with the Briscoes, right? So it made sense for him. So, I can be down on that. And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the celebration of a guy who was taken way too soon, and a guy who, I am still stunned to this day, despite that it's been we're over a week at this point. right? I'm still stunned at the amount of love that is just being genuinely expressed every day in regards to Jay Briscoe. And I think it is a shame that we've waited this long to understand it. I'm not going to pretend to sit here and tell you, yeah, no, I completely was aware of the significance that Jay Briscoe had in so many people's careers. There's some people that I can pinpoint. Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, absolutely. There's a lot of people. Jay Lethal, There's a lot of people though. I just didn't. I wasn't aware, and makes it all the more touching / bittersweet, right? And I thought this was a perfectly worked match. They do the exchange to begin, where it's like, oh, we know each other so well. Mark chops Lethal, does some redneck kung fu, standing neck breaker by Briscoe as well. Lethal dives and works over Briscoe. Briscoe fights back with an iconoclasm, goes for an early J driller. Lethal, of course, avoids it, lands a kick and a gourd buster, and hits the lethal injection, but Briscoe rolls out of the ring. On the floor, we get a blockbuster by Mark Briscoe, which was pretty cool, but not as cool as the Froggy Bow off the top turnbuckle through a table on the floor. That ruled. Lethal tries to avoid a couple of J drillers, but he eats a lariat, and that stuns him enough for Mark to land a J driller. Of course, Jay Briscoe's finisher. And then after the match, celebration, people are on their feet. This was, I was a bit down on this crowd, but they were alive for this one. And after the match, we're celebrating, and the entire locker room is out. We got the graphics. We had a beautiful video package early on that, just brought me to tears. Images with the family and his girls, and I was like, all right, it's still a tough one to handle, and if you're making parallels with your own lives and the people that are important in your life, and whether do you tell them enough and so on, it's okay. Part of grieving is making sure that you understand. It's finding your own path in this. So remember, you are surrounded by people who love you, and you should tell them at every moment that you can, that you love them, because you really know when this is all going to be taken away from you. Picture perfect. Got nothing to say other than that it was a lovely, touching way to end the show. Good on, and look, I don't think this is the occasion right now for me to go full rant on Warner Brothers Discovery, but good on Tony Khan for fighting for this, and whoever accompanied him in this, in an environment where he is going to be renegotiating his deals. This probably required a certain amount of fighting. He got some pushback. He probably worked hard for this. So good on him. And for all of his, for all the the criticisms that you can bring forth to Tony Khan, and rightfully so in some occasions, there's one thing that we always have to keep in mind in regards to this guy, is that he's a wrestling fan. That's always been his thing. He's a guy who was on the message boards to a degree. Like he's one of us. He's a guy who grew up with a version of wrestling that he felt was underrepresented, and he was a big Ring of Honor guy. I am not surprised that he fought for this. And probably last week was too quick, but we were able to get it this week. The tribute show, as what I'm understanding, is out on YouTube right now. The Jay Lethal and the Jay Briscoe tribute show that they taped, from what I understand, is out there. So we can continue celebrating the life and career of Jay Briscoe moving forward. So a good, heartwarming yet again, bittersweet end to Dynamite. An overall okay episode. Fine. Like, nothing outrageously wrong with it, but missing that second gear, missing that third gear. And I'm saying this from a position of being completely spoiled as a pro wrestling fan. And I applaud this. There's nothing really to shit on. This was not a terrible 2 hours of wrestling. It was just like, oh, what's missing? What's missing from my Dynamite this week? Light the fuse, as they say. Why didn't you? Is the fuse damp? Is it moist? A lot of people love that word. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap it up. Thank you all for joining me. If you haven't already, leave a like on the video. Subscribe if you want more of this. I'll be back on Tuesday for another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show proper. Otherwise, I'll be back next Thursday for the Dynamite review. Hope you all have a great rest of your week. Fantastic weekend whenever you are listening to this, and I will see you next time.